David, the rarest of occurrences in LA this morning, I was woken up by rain. You do not expect that here. And it wasn't just a little pitter-patter. It was that lashing rain. And it's not stopped since. It's been a miserable day. But I know you were woken up even earlier than I was.
Yes, Martha, I wakened to the sound of Marine One and escort aircraft returning President Trump to the White House at 2:45 a.m. To be honest, it felt like I'd wakened as an extra in Independence Day or something.
Wow, a slightly more glamorous get-up call for you then. I'm Martha Kellner in Los Angeles.
And I'm David Blevins in the Trump100 podcast studio here in Washington, D.C. The President of Peace, a title first bestowed on him in a White House video, is back in D.C. to meet the Argentine president and posthumously award Charlie Kirk the highest civilian honour in the nation. October the 14th, 2025, according to the president, now known as the National Day of Remembrance for Charlie Kirk.
And here on the West Coast, it's Barack Obama versus the Terminator. The former president and Arnie are facing off in a major political row. We'll get into all of that and more on today's episode. First, though, David, Donald Trump back home from the Middle East after 48 hours, which was historic. There's no doubt about that. And I follow one of his presidential aides on Instagram, and she posted a video this morning of a selection of daily newspapers which were laid out on a conference table in the Oval Office, waiting for Donald Trump to arrive. And it made for incredibly happy reading for the president. First of all, they had the Washington Times, which is a conservative newspaper over here. The headline there was "Peace Plan Glory for Trump." They also had a copy of the Epoch Times, which is a far-right international newspaper. The headline there, "Trump brings peace to the Middle East." The New York Post called him the leader of the free world, Trump's peace triumph. There was, thankfully, a wee bit more balance from the Washington Post, who called the deal a transformational but tenuous peace, and the New York Times, which said hostages freed but Gaza path unclear. I think what is definitely true, though, is that however you view these achievements, it has been among the most memorable foreign trips by any president in recent history. And Donald Trump's work ethic, as you say, returning at 2:45 in the morning, is quite something.
Yes, I hope he's listening to Trump100 as well as reading the newspaper headlines.
I'm sure.
Whatever you think of this president, the schedule is brutal for a 79-year-old man, Martha.
Yeah.
An 11-hour flight from Washington to the Middle East, where there were speeches, bilaterals, what resembled a backstage meet and greet with world leaders, and then back to Washington in the middle of the night and straight into another day in front of the cameras. That pace was the undoing of Joe Biden when he did a televised debate with Donald Trump after a whistle-stop tour. We know what happened next. But Trump just keeps on going.
Yeah, and that split screen is not lost on this president. There was a bizarre answer, actually, to a question from a reporter today about whether Trump wanted to visit Argentina. He immediately launches into this diatribe talking about the beach and how Biden spent too much time on the beach, talking about Biden's thin legs in comparison with his heavy legs.
Do you like to visit Argentina soon?
I do. I would love to. I'm just a little busy. I would love to. I'd love to go to Argentina. I'd like to be like Biden. I'd like to go to the beach. My legs are not quite as thin as his. My legs are slightly heavier. My arms are slightly larger. My body is a little bit larger than his. I'm not sure it would be appreciated on the beach, but I'm not going to take a chance. You won't see me in a bathing suit. You won't see in a bathing suit sitting on a beach in Argentina, falling down, not being able to lift a 3-ounce chair, meant for old people to lift, and he couldn't lift it.
Maybe not the most sensitive comment to make about, a man going through radiation treatment for advanced prostate cancer at the moment. But there is some truth to the fact that Donald Trump has so much energy. He is irrepressible. And today was evidence of that, straight off the plane into another jam-packed schedule at the White House. First of all, he had this meeting with the Argentine president, Javier Milei, of course, last seen in Washington, D.C., Milei next to a chainsaw-wielding Elon Musk. That was, you may remember, at the Conservative Political Conference back in February. You were there today, David. What did he say? Were there any eye-catching moments like that?
Yes, Elon Musk actually stole that idea from Milei. He was wielding chainsaws and pledging to cut government spending at election rallies in Argentina first. The US president and the Argentine president are kindred spirits in many ways, and I'm not just talking about their hairstyles. Neither had a background in politics. Trump, a former businessman and TV host, Milei, a former economist and rock musician. He had already talked Trump into a $20 billion bailout for Argentina's floundering economy.
Wow.
But of course, he needs more. And it would be helpful for him if that came before the midterm elections there in 2 weeks' time. Now, some US taxpayers are going to raise their eyebrows at that when the government says it hasn't the money for healthcare reform at home. But it's in Trump's interest, of course, to have greater influence in Latin America.
Yeah, Trump is keen to keep Milei in post and his government on track because they're kind of an antidote to President Lula and the left-wing government in Brazil. It's helpful for Trump to maintain some influence in South America, to stop Russia and China's growing influence in the global South. And incidentally, as Trump was meeting with the Argentine president, it was announced that the US had bombed yet another boat in the Caribbean, claiming it was a drug boat from Venezuela. This is happening all the time. It's the fifth such boat bombing by the US military in recent weeks. 27 people have died as a result. And there's still no concrete proof, or at least there isn't concrete proof that's been made public, that any of those 27 people have been narco traffickers. So, people keeping a close eye on that. But in general, on Trump's interest in foreign affairs, the argument from some of the hardcore MAGA base will be that Trump campaigned on being America first, but it seems like his main focus at the moment is on all manner of foreign issues.
Oh, absolutely. News networks have been clogging up the air miles with this president. From the Middle East to Alaska, to a state visit in the UK, back to the Middle East, all in the space of a few months. And just when you think he's going to talk about one subject, he talks about another altogether. I mean, he was hosting his Argentine counterpart for lunch when he delivered the headline of the day, not on Argentina, but on the Middle East.
They will disarm. And I spoke to Hamas, and I said, "You're going to disarm, right?" "Yes, sir, we're going to disarm." That's what they told me. They will disarm, or we will disarm them. Got it? Okay.
What is the deadline?
So less of a weave through the topics of the day and more of a handbrake turn. A complete 180 degree from making peace to making threats in the space of 24 hours, and not even veiled threats. So he has challenges abroad in terms of disarmament and governance and return of hostages remains in the Middle East. But there's a growing list of challenges at home too.
Yeah, we're still in the middle of a government shutdown. In fact, during this meeting with Milei, Trump was asked about paying troops. So troops haven't been paid since the shutdown started a fortnight ago. Interestingly, he claimed that someone, we don't know who, had already offered to pay those troops.
I actually have a man who is a very wealthy person, you'll know that when I tell you this, who called a donor, a great gentleman, and he said, if there's any money necessary, shortfall, for the paying of the troops, then I will pay it, meaning he will pay it. How about that?
Is that even legal or possible? It must be someone with deep pockets. You're talking billions of dollars.
Yeah. We don't know who it is yet. Lots of people speculating that it might be Elon Musk. It could be someone else. But, we have the government shut down. There's also a big political fight happening here in California. President Obama is even getting involved. And this all relates to redistricting, which is something we talked about on the podcast a few weeks ago. It started out in Texas, where the state government there is changing the borders of certain counties. So those are like the smaller voting areas, in order to try and dilute Democrat votes and emphasize Republican votes to give them a better chance of winning elections. In California, the California governor, Gavin Newsom, has been looking to directly retaliate. So basically to do the same thing, but here to benefit the Democrats. In California, that requires voters to go out and vote in favor of something called Proposition 50. It's a measure that barely anyone's ever heard of before here, but is all over the airwaves, the TV screens, on social media, because it's on the ballot for next month's local elections. And Prop 50 has become the touchstone for politics in the state at the moment.
It's really unusual for former presidents to get involved in state politics. I don't recall Clinton or George W. doing it, for example. But Obama has in this case. He's even made an ad that's running on TV in California.
California, the whole nation is counting on you. Democracy is on the ballot November 4th. Republicans want to steal enough seats in Congress to rig the next election and wield unchecked power for 2 more years. With Prop 50, you can stop Republicans in their tracks. Prop 50 puts our elections back on a level playing field, preserves independent redistricting over the long term, and lets the people decide. Return your ballot today. Vote yes on 50.
Yeah, this week, this has been played on all the local TV stations. Obama doesn't mention Donald Trump by name, but as he talks about Republicans trying to steal the next election, there are pictures of Donald Trump flashing up on the screen. Now, Prop 50, if it is approved, would add, in theory, another 5 seats onto the Democratic ledger, which would make up, in theory, of course, again, for the 5 that they could lose in Texas because of the redistricting effort there by Trump and his allies, which is designed to help Republican efforts in elections.
And Arnie's against Prop 50, isn't he? So he's the big star that's come out against this policy. And presumably, as the former governor of California and a big Hollywood name, he's still super popular in the state.
Yeah, he is popular, but he's not particularly friendly with Donald Trump. They're opposed on all sorts of issues. You don't see him, for instance, up on the stage with Donald Trump at Republican conferences. They are, though, kind of on the same side when it comes to Prop 50, but for very different reasons. Obviously, Trump doesn't want Prop 50 because it would favour the Democrats in the next election. Schwarzenegger's view is that 2 wrongs don't make a right here. And just because of what Republicans are doing in Texas, it shouldn't then follow that Democrats should be doing that in California.
I think this is where we're supposed to insert cheesy quotes from Arnie Schwarzenegger movies, but let's not.
I'll be back.
Trump's meeting with the Argentine president wasn't the only event at the White House on Tuesday. We got a first look at the new patio proper when they moved the ceremony honouring Charlie Kirk outdoors at the last minute.
Yeah, this is the new Rose Garden and it is new and improved, says Donald Trump. Here's the quote. He said, "People are loving it. They're loving it like they've not loved a lot of things." Did you get a sense that people were loving it down there, David?
Well, concrete instead of roses? I'm not sure.
Anyway, before this event started to honour Charlie Kirk, the warm-up for it included quite the playlist of power ballads. I heard ABBA, Lionel Richie. I don't know whether that was what you were expecting.
Yes, the president kept saying his policies from the Middle East to immigration were what Charlie would have wanted. I'm not entirely sure Hello by Lionel Richie and Dancing Queen from ABBA were what Charlie would have wanted. But beyond the slightly unusual music choice, this was a serious event, of course, to commemorate Charlie Kirk and award him the highest civilian honour in America. Donald Trump said he had raced back, in his words, from the other side of the world because Tuesday would have been Charlie Kirk's 32nd birthday. It's not unusual, Martha, for the Presidential Medal of Freedom to be awarded posthumously, of course. Martin Luther King was given one, so was John F. Kennedy.
Yeah, not unusual, but I guess what is unusual is for it to happen so soon after the person's death. It's not been 5 weeks yet since Charlie Kirk was shot dead as he gave a speech, of course, on a college campus in Utah. But normally this process takes years, doesn't it?
Yes, and there is the inevitable debate about whether he is a worthy candidate for this. Those who support him say, as an advocate for free speech and faith and American values, he deserves the award. Critics say the president is politicising the Medal of Freedom. But nevertheless, he has chosen to mark Charlie Kirk's birthday by granting the highest civilian award. The Presidential Medal of Freedom was created for people who have made a significant difference to the national interest, to world peace, or to cultural affairs. And the conferring of it is within the gift of the serving president.
And you spoke about the weave earlier, David. This was a weaving speech for the ages, long and confusing. At one point, there were sirens going off in the background, and he made the claim that sirens were not heard in Washington, D.C. before he got into power, because now he's, of course, fighting crime like no one else was before. So, which was surprising to me, because I lived in DC for 18 months and I remember hearing a fair few sirens during my time there. But he was veering off down all sorts of different avenues, talking about everything from geopolitics to the Democrats to ordering an Uber. And I couldn't help but think, as he, stood beside Charlie Kirk's widow, that it felt a little unbecoming in the setting of a memorial.
Yeah, sometimes it feels like he does not have a sense of occasion, or at least whoever is writing his speech does not have a sense of occasion. But at least it kept him preoccupied, Martha, because he's furious with Time magazine over its front cover. He called it maybe the worst photo of all time. Now, Donald Trump did concede it was a relatively good story about his endeavours in the Middle East, but then went on to post these words. They disappeared my hair and then had something floating on top of my head that looked like a floating crown, but an extremely small one. Really weird, ! I never liked taking pictures from underneath angles, but this is a super bad picture and deserves to be called out. What are they doing and why? Do you have the answers, Martha?
No, but to be fair to the 45th and 47th President of the United States, I empathise, because I looked at that picture and I thought that is not a good angle for the man. And we know, because we have to shoot what they call piece to cameras, which are when we're talking directly down the camera lens. And you do not want your camera operator hanging down below your chin. It is not a flattering angle. I empathise with him. But you're going to have to watch. But anyone listening, you'll have to watch the vodcast, which is the video version of this podcast, to see the picture and to make up your own mind.
And I'm just noting for that vodcast, your camera is much higher than mine right now, Martha. Mine's a little below the chin.
I'm sensible, that's why, David.
Martha, lovely to be with you again on the podcast.
Likewise. And just one last thing, David. I'm hoping that you picked up any extra kitchen cabinets that you might need, because 50% tariffs now imposed on kitchen cabinets.
Martha, I would be expecting a chef and a therapist for the price of some soft closing drawers right now. Thanks for listening. We'll be back on Friday morning. And don't forget to send us an email at trump100@sky.uk with any thoughts or questions. We're always glad to hear them.
We certainly are. And we'll see you later in the week. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.